Thank you very much for listening to the Voice of Job Seekers podcast. My name is Mark Anthony Dyson. You can just call me Mark. Been doing this since 2013, coming up on 12 years exactly. I write a blog called The Voice of Job Seekers, which has been around since 2011, July of 2011. So it'll be 14 years coming up. I hope that if you haven't already, gone and read the articles are there, but also the podcast, which has been around for a long time. And I probably had more than 300 episodes with more than 200 guests. And a lot of those guests were multiple guests on one show. So there's been a lot of content I've been able to create with other content creators, career coaches, recruiters, career experts, authors, business people. So I encourage you to go listen to those. You can find those on the Voice of Job Seekers podcast. You can find that on most podcast directories. And I'm going to do a series of solo episodes. For the first time, most of the episodes I've ever done have been with other people, or there've been other voices. There've been once or twice where there was someone else's voice and someone else's voices. So I've done a variety of things. I thought I would take the helm at this particular point. Now, I do have some content that I've done by myself throughout the years, but it wasn't really intentional. It was either by default, or I was trying something new, or I was trying something. For this particular podcast, I'm doing something a little bit different, only because I want my thoughts to be out there, and I want to see what you guys think, and I would love your feedback on how things are going. And I've been surveying the land of AI as it relates to the Voice of Job Seekers, and also to my other podcast, the Job Scam Report. You can find that at markanthonydyson.substack.com. But the whole AI thing is blowing up really big, and in fact, it's here. And I've even written articles even back from 2019. There's one on flex jobs that I've had, and I've had several since then on the Voice of Job Seekers blog. But AI is something that it's here. Now that I've been able to take a look, and I'm hearing a lot of different thoughts and hearing news reports and getting the thoughts from my colleagues and from different spaces, I decided to give my idea of what it would look like. Now, on my other podcast, Job Scam Report, I talked about the idea of job search being related more to, of the future being related to search everywhere optimization, as opposed to search engine optimization. The big differences are SEO, search engine optimization, from the viewpoint of, for instance, me writing a blog. I would want to rank for certain keywords that are related to job search and careers specifically, so that I can rank as high as I can. So that means using all things that are related to job search several times in a particular blog post. So I would want to use job search, and I would have mentioned that 6 or 7 times. Mention if it's job interviews, or job interviews red flags, or something like that. I want to use it multiple times throughout the article so that I can rank. On the other hand, I've written for other outlets. I've written for articles for Lenza.com, is one I've been writing for the past 3 years. It might be 4 years now, not quite, but I've written 25, 26 articles for them. I've also have written for recruiter.com, Jobs to Careers. Payscale.com is one I really enjoyed writing for, and learned a lot about writing from there because of the editor. And having learned that, I see how a lot of times when I will hand in a draft, Sometimes the draft, some of the words are changed around so it could be optimized for search engines, for it to be found in search engine. So if someone wants to know more about interview red flags, they could put that and the article can show up, or at least can show up on the first page. Optimization is what we'll be talking about now, because that's where AI kind of comes in. And AI is going to give you different results. In other words, you could search for me on Google as it relates to search engine optimization and put in my name, Mark Anthony Dyson, and you'll get a series of links, and you'll need to go link to find out the information from that specific article only. Search everywhere optimization, as it relates to AI, is going to give you a profile of me and give you citations to my work, not only to the Voice of Job Seekers and the Job Scan report, but also they're going to cite different articles where I've been cited in the press or different papers, even some books that are out there on the internet. Like I saw one for Google Books. I didn't know that I was even in the book. But having said that, I've been in a number of books that I've known about. And then there were a couple that, wow, where did this come from? But I think that's gave me a clue that perhaps job seekers need to think about now, not just trying to have a good LinkedIn profile. And I think that's a great start. And to some degree, that might be the main thing that you may need. But to dominate the narrative that you want to have about yourself and about your reputation, you should probably perhaps think about being found in more places than just one. Now, if you were in college and especially if you're writing dissertations or if you're writing thesis and they're put online, that's a plus for you. If they will find your name. I know, like my son, my oldest son, he wrote for his master's, he was part of two kind of big papers that were published. And not only they were published, but he got a chance to go speak internationally over in Scotland, no less, to present a paper there. Two of his papers were presented there. One of them that he presented and somebody else presented the other one, because they wouldn't allow one speaker to present two papers. But if you were to search his name, you may or may not find the paper. It's been a while now since that's happened. It's been like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now. But all of that to say is that's a way you can possibly rank. So let's say you were on a podcast or you were on a video, or that you've done some videos to where it's related to your industry and your work. Or maybe it didn't relate, but it was something that was helpful to people, that people found engaging. You can possibly rank in that kind of way and be found through AI. So let's talk a second about how that would look. And I'm just going to throw out some short reasons. I'll expand on all of them, I think, eventually. But there's something this is something just to think about in going about how you can make the most out of your job search for now and in the future. In other words, for those of you not looking for a job, this is a great place for you to start while you're employed. It's better to look for a job while you're employed, while you're not employed. But you should be able to start thinking about how you can expand your reach and how you can see much more positively, especially if you want to get expert pay. Expert pay is pretty good in most industries. If you want to be considered a top talent, if you want to be sought after, that's where your job search can begin. Not particularly you just looking around for jobs, but also people start to find you and want to network with you, connect with you. Now, there's other ways you could do this. You could do this through, if you're part of your industry's organization and you worked on the committee and you presented a paper, your name is on that paper. If it's published on the web, you're building an attraction magnet for yourself, so to speak. You're building something that people are going to come to you. And people eventually find you if they're looking for someone with your qualifications or somebody who's been exposed to the work that they're doing, at least to be able to have those conversations. In broader terms, some people call it brand authority. Some people will call it enhancing your personal brand. It really, I like the idea of digitizing your reputation, as Rory Vaden calls it. You can look him up. But I think that's one of the things you'll need to think about if you want the long game and benefit from long game, is that you want to attract and be found as well. Secondly, that you're willing to own the narrative. If you're owning the narrative in your career, especially when it comes to your skills and your work and the results and achievements that you've had in your career, it is something to really think about when you want to, again, you want to attract employers, who want to attract recruiters. I think you should take it a step further and maybe have a personal newsletter, which I've talked about in other shows before. I have a friend of mine who actually, as a consultant, he keeps people apprised of his career exploits, so to speak, through a newsletter. And I think there's about 150 or so. And usually for 150 people, you don't have to pay very much, if anything at all, in fact. There are ways you could do that free. And like MailChimp, 150 doesn't cost anything to send out regular once a month, or even if it's just every other month, just let people know what you're doing and people are connected, that you've had a closer relationship, so you can build that community because they may be your next referral source. But that's another way that AI can also find you, especially if you allow that newsletter to, let's say, be reposted and republished as a blog post. And if you want to do it cheaply, you could do it on Medium. You could do it on LinkedIn. That was a blog post. Substack allows you to do it free. And that way, again, that allows AI to use that as a potential citation. So when people look you up, they can see your brand authority, so to speak, your digitized presence on the web, and then also for the fact that you do have a small audience. You have people who will come to you. And it's great, even better, when they comment. I think LinkedIn is also great, not just to use the LinkedIn newsletter, but also to use the LinkedIn posts. Because some of those, if you look at the pages, you look on second or third, fourth pages, or for looking for some people, you see a LinkedIn post that either has their comment or that they've published on LinkedIn. That's the power of LinkedIn. Being able to show up on Google is a very cool thing. And you can find that out if you set up Google alerts in your name. I will put it in quotes, so when it searches, it just searches your name and how it's presented on LinkedIn and other spaces. And I hope that maybe your LinkedIn and your social presence and your schoolwork, your school papers, and whatever podcasts, they're all using the same variation of your name. You make it really easy for them to find you. But I would really consider that. In addition to, again, the digitization and just building some kind of engagement, place of engagement or audience, or somewhere where you show up with some ideas and thought leadership, but you would be able to sometimes use some way to distribute that information, not just through a newsletter. But I know some people who are using YouTube videos in that respect every now and then to show their face and show that connection. I think it really does make a difference in a sea of names and lists and resumes and cover letters and LinkedIn. That video is the one thing that can really make the connection, because it's dually creating great SEO, which is still valuable right now, as opposed to having great presence in AI, that they can still, again, using that video presence as a citation. Now, I was hoping that with all that was built around video, transcripts are a little bit more searchable than they actually are. The notes are, but this transcript is not this particular time. Maybe AI might be able to do that better than Google did with the SEO. I don't know, but that remains to be seen. But that's just something else to think about. It is something that you can really build your differentiation on. So again, we're talking about brand authority. We're talking about digitizing your reputation or some kind of space where you own and you present your thought leadership, the way that you'll be able to differentiate yourself in the marketplace among your peers and people who you compete with. Again, showing your face and being able to speak and have conversations and showing that you're likable builds a differentiation, especially among the sea of names that employers and recruiters are, hiring managers are seeing these days. After all, for each position, people now, employers are putting out one position, they can get 400 or 500 hits or applications per posting, which, you know, amongst names, as opposed to having an impression of you, remembering you, they can just either go find you, or when they spot you, which is unlikely, especially among the sea of names, again, being seen in another spot, in other spots, could really help you in the long term, because recruiters are still doing Boolean searches. They're still using the internet, not always LinkedIn, although LinkedIn is a lot of their main tools. That's a good place to be. I think there's other ways that to consider, is that your ability to be able to use AI is really important. And that you start searching your name in AI, the different AI spots. And there's lots of them. There's hundreds of them. But if you start with ChatGPT, start with Claude, start with Gemini, and some of the others, some of these they're saying that you're going to pay now. But there's a lot of AI models. If you already use Grammarly, you may be able to start there. They have the AI component. I use some software that has their own AI component. The one that I edit with, the script has an AI. They call it Underlord. They have an AI component. But I would say this would be a good spot to try to find a way to use AI, so you can see how you're found now, and maybe that could inform you on how you could be used in the future. Now, I would apply some of the same principles that I did when I first started years ago on the web and writing blog copy and articles and start to have a presence. I've always used Mark Anthony Dyson. Always. When I used Mark Dyson, and people call me Mark offline, that's the name I've always gone by, people person. So Mark Anthony is just for the web. So when I put in Mark Anthony in Google, I'm found. Now, Mark Anthony Dyson also found fairly easy on most of the AI models that I've tried. There are times when I had to prompt it. I would have to say, Mark Anthony Dyson, the voice of job seekers. Then I'm found, and there's a list of what I've done. And then I put in Mark Anthony Dyson, the job scam report, and it puts the different citations, articles I've written that's related to job scams. That's something you should consider. I would say a viable strategy these days, if you really want to differentiate yourself and put a breadcrumb out there before you really need to bake the bread, so to speak, is to think about using video or being part video, make some video content in some kind of way. May mean to, even if you made something on LinkedIn that's a minute, that's a pretty good start. And if no telling if a lot of people like it, or if it gets certain likes, and let's say it's somebody like one person likes it and reposts it, it can lead to more visibility for yourself, get more people to follow you, and perhaps even getting the eyes of a hiring manager or recruiters. That will help you. And all this, I say that maybe in the scheme of, if there's 100 chances that you would have in finding an employer that way, maybe it might be at 5%, but I think it's at 5% if you're using the long game, if you're using it consistently. Even if it's once a month, you create a 2 or 3 minute video saying, hey, this is how my job search, or to be helpful in some kind of way, or to ask a question where you're getting some kind of feedback. Those are just basic ideas, and I'm just thinking in part out loud, but YouTube is the second largest search engine still. It may have a slightly different place when it comes to AI. It might be more enhanced than the traditional Google search. But I think people, the more you're able to be found and be seen before you're needed, rather than when you're needed, is your greatest chance. And that's why I say while you're employed, as a good opportunity. If you're not employed, it's not the greatest short-term strategy, but it is something that it may be a great strategy 6 months down the line if you decide to make it a staple. But as far as a short-term, I need a job now, I'm in desperation mode, it may not be. But that's not to say that you still can't engage people. That you still can't create conversations that are useful, that are educational to yourself, and that helps someone else. But I think that the whole idea is that you got to build smart when it comes to AI and approach it in a way and start building now, because next year might be a little late to be on the top if you want to be thought of first. But how things are delivered as much as important as what you're delivering. And you want to be seen in the best light, of course. Audio is still not a bad choice either, as this is an audio podcast, audio episode, but I have tons of video content on my channel. If you look for Mark Anthony Dyson on YouTube, there's more than 600 videos there. There's lots of shorts, there's lots of panels, there's all kinds of things. And I hope you enjoyed the last episode I published recently, where I was on a panel at St. Xavier's University here in Chicago, small college, and it was a great panel that we would have. Lots of great content came out of that, and I'll be sharing that in pieces as well. There's a lot to share. I still have a lot in the tank over the years for the Voice of Job Seekers. I know that I took a break and may have lost some subscribers. That's okay. I'm good with that. I think a lot of times those things will come back. I've been really fortunate with the Voice of Job Seekers podcast. It's provided a lot of opportunities for me to be talked about in certain circles, and it makes me smile. All that to say is just stay tuned to the Voice of Job Seekers podcast and what you listen to. Again, my name is Mark Anthony Dyson, and I'll look forward to the next episode. In the meantime, peace and the valley of love. I'm out.